Entrepreneurialism, I think, is not necessarily a career path, although for some it is. It's really a mindset and a skill set. Some people are born to be investment bankers, doctors, accountants, which is terrific. But other people are being steered that way, but have some other love. They want to be a musician. They want to work for a not-for-profit. They want to be a startup founder. Starting companies so hard. There will be many times when you don't think, but you go to bed knowing that you're going to be bankrupt tomorrow morning.
An entrepreneur, right? Or a would-be founder. What do you see in the most successful of those people? What kind of really separates them from others?
Number one is the
Patrick Chung, I am so delighted that you're able to join us for this show. You know, I've for a long time, I've really wanted to feature you.
Oh, that's nice.
I think you are amazing. I think the work that you do is amazing. And so I'm delighted to have our listeners be able to, benefit from the perspectives and experiences you've always been so willing to share. So welcome.
That is very kind, Manny. Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
So let me start off. Tell me more about XFund.
Okay, great. Yeah. So for many years, I was the head of the consumer investment practice at NEA, which is the largest venture firm in the United States. I joined right after graduating from Harvard, and I founded the seed stage investing practice there. And so as part of the consumer practice and the seed stage investing practice, I just naturally interacted with a lot of entrepreneurs off university campuses. So in 2010, I had this really amazing opportunity to meet Cherry Murray, who was the second dean of Harvard's new School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. And she said, hey, would you ever consider maybe thinking about starting a venture capital firm in collaboration with the new engineering school? And I thought, wow, that sounds like that would never happen, but yes, sure. And so we talked about it for 2 years. Mike Smith, who was then the Faculty of Arts and Sciences Dean, was so helpful to us in helping us put this together, conceptualize it. And at the end of 2 years, in collaboration with SEAS, NEA and Excel and SEAS, put together this new engineering focused venture capital firm that would be very strictly financially and legally distinct from the university, but that would not only support Harvard founders, but also be open to everyone since day one to help draw new talent into the new SEAS ecosystem. And so the fund is really specifically engineered to back people just like the population that you work with.
And it's an amazing story when you think about leveraging, right, the financial power along with the brains and the ideas of college campuses, and we could see how those benefits, have accrued with the companies you've supported. Tell us a little bit about that. Are there some of these startups that you supported that you're particularly proud of?
Gosh, there's so many. I'll give you one that's a little early in our history and one that's quite late in our history.
Perfect.
So we met through a student who worked with us, a non-resident tutor in Eliot House named Daniel Nadler in, I think, 2013. And Daniel had a PhD in economics from Harvard. He was doing a postdoctoral fellowship here, and he was set to pursue an academic track. We met him, and we saw that he'd built this financial analytics platform for his academic research. And we just looked at it and we thought, oh my goodness, Daniel, this looks like Bloomberg 2.0 on steroids. Daniel, if you want to build this as a company, we would love to back you. And Daniel had never thought about starting a company, and he said, I don't know anything about it. And so we helped educate him about here's what it would mean to start a company, here's what we would do, here's what you would do, here's how it would all work. And he thought long and hard about it. And he started a company called Kensho. And he then hired his very first engineers out of Harvard, MIT. They built this amazing company. In about 3.5 years, he sold the company to S&P Global for about $700 million, which was just astounding. I mean, he just says, I never dreamt of having an outcome like this. I thought I'd be a career academic. While building his company, Daniel published a book of 100 imagined ancient love poems, which was very favorably reviewed by the New York Times. He was inducted as the youngest member of the American Academy of Poets. And so to us, that kind of encapsulates the thing that we do, which is people may not ever have thought about starting a company. And some people absolutely don't want to start a company. But for those who do and just don't know it, learning about this alternate path, pursuing this alternate path, and then really enjoying that alternate path is what we hope to enable. And so this is an amazing story of a guy who applied his real academic knowledge and made it useful and valuable to a wide swath of the population. Daniel has just started his second company now, which we're also lucky enough to be investors in, called Open-Mindedness, and it is an AI doctor. It is the first AI ever to pass the U.S. medical licensing exam with a score of over 90%. ChatGPT also passes the exam, but at about 60%. And Daniel is back at it again. So he's, in this one time that we met him, we kind of, I don't want to take full credit for it, but we helped spark an idea and a passion in him to create very useful things. And today, over a quarter of U.S. doctors use Open-Mindedness, Daniel's latest company, and we are so proud to have been supporters from the very start.
Wow, what an amazing story, and it also reminds me of this important notion that you need support to make these things happen, right?
Yeah.
Even when you want to, even when you come out the door, it's so hard to embark on this on your own, right? Never mind somebody who says, "I never thought about that,"
Right.
and then all of a sudden, again, through this support mechanism, through the affirmation and the encouragement. Wow, amazing things happen, not only in terms of personal wealth, mind you, but also in terms of the impact that people like Daniel are having. So let's stick with this theme of, an entrepreneur, right, or a would-be founder. What do you see in the most successful of those people? What kind of really separates them from others?
Yeah, great question. So we are lucky enough that most of the founders we work with are out of the world's very best universities. So Harvard, MIT, Stanford, Berkeley, Oxford, Cambridge. And these people, when they graduate, they have so many opportunities, as you well know, because MCCS actually helps them get into these opportunities. There are very well-trod paths to medical school, to law school, to jobs in finance, consulting. And for that subset of people who turn their back on, a life of almost guaranteed riches in one of these tracks and instead decide to do the most risky thing possible, which is start a startup, that self-selection is a gigantic signal to us because it means, my goodness, this is the sure thing, the surer thing. The fact that you feel so strongly about this other path means something very special to us. And so we will want to support and provide as much scaffolding around that person's efforts as we can to help her succeed. So that's number one we look for. Number one is the propensity or the interest to actually get off that well-beaten path to Wall Street and do something different. When we see that, wow, we're that's quite a big statement. It's almost like taking a leave of absence from college. That's a big statement. Although we never encourage that. We always encourage people to graduate for certain because we actually believe that is the very best preparation. Secondly, we look for signs of persistence. Starting companies so hard. There will be many times when you don't think, but you go to bed knowing that you're going to be bankrupt tomorrow morning. And the people who, when they know it, gather up all their team and say, "Okay, everyone, you're being laid off. So sorry, it didn't work out." Those people we've never heard of because they shut it down. The people we have heard of are the ones who went to bed knowing that tomorrow morning they'd go bankrupt, and they woke up the next morning and they figured out how to keep going another hour, another day, another week, another month. Those are the people who are persistent. And so we see that in all kinds of ways. Sometimes it's very obvious. You might have a founder who survived cancer or who got to the United States by, jumping off a boat and swimming, literally swimming here. And in other times, you see it in all kinds of other ways. A struggle in a thesis that wasn't working out and the experiment failed, but somehow they got through it. We look for persistence in all of those ways. And then third, we look for people who, as Peter Thiel has said, go from 0 to 1 instead of 1 to N. People who are not merely interested in making version 6 a little bit faster and cheaper than version 5, but in creating something that has never existed before. And we often see that, especially in the undergraduate population, because when you're an undergrad, especially in a place like this, you're full of possibility, and you have the capability and the risk tolerance to actually try it. So those are kind of three of the things that I think have been common to the very best founders.
Yeah. Amazing, because I think as people think about this, they kind of compare themselves, right, to others. They think, what does it really take to really be successful, aside from what I think is a good idea? But, you and I have also talked before about the kind of entrepreneurial mindset, right? The broader set of skills, whether you decide to become an entrepreneur or not, there's a certain kind of skills and abilities which seems to have value almost universally. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about that a little bit.
What a good way to express it, Manny, because entrepreneurialism, I think, is not necessarily a career path, although for some it is. But as you say, it's really a mindset and a skill set. And so the things that I would use to characterize that mindset are probably number one, you're willing to get off a beaten track if it doesn't really ring true to you. So number one, I think, is a type of self-knowledge and introspection, which says, some people are born to be investment bankers, doctors, accountants, which is terrific. But other people are being steered that way, but have some other love. They want to be a musician. They want to work for a not-for-profit. They want to be a startup founder. And so knowing yourself well enough and having the courage to get on that path is a type of entrepreneurialism, because it's coming from within and you're actually willing to pursue it, number one. Number two, you're willing to push boundaries. A lot of the time, people are I think people with an entrepreneurial mindset think to themselves, yeah, that's never been done before. Yeah, it's kind of very ambiguous, but I'm actually going to embrace the ambiguity, the risk, the uncertainty, because it's kind of more interesting. Because if I join this, this law firm, I know in year 5, here's where I'll be. In year 6, I'm going to be there. And it's very predictable. And some people are comforted by that predictability. But I think true entrepreneurs find that kind of uninteresting. Yeah. And third, I think true entrepreneurs just have an ability to attract and other people. Because as you point out, being an entrepreneur is so hard. You can't build anything of value just by yourself. Although in AI, I think people are starting to feel like, yes, there will be a $1 trillion company that has one human employee. But so far in history, you haven't been able to. And so real entrepreneurs are able to sell their vision and say, here's my vision. Doesn't that sound interesting? Would you like to come join me? And the ones who are able to do that are able to generate a critical mass of people and teams that can go off and achieve something remarkable.
I've always felt, Patrick, and I think you have too, that kind of mindset, that kind of nimbleness, that desire to go beyond the status quo, to see it in your mind's eye and to pursue it, right? And not to be limited by the typical structures is, I think, something that more and more, even Fortune 500 companies, or even in industries that we tend to think about as fairly mundane and lockstep, I think that's what that kind of entrepreneurial mindset distinguishes someone who is successful in almost any organization, right? That they have that curiosity, that interest, that drive, that willingness to go beyond their role and think beyond their role.
Yes.
And that's something we talk quite a bit about at Harvard. How do we, kind of continue this mindset? So let's talk a little bit about, because obviously we've mentioned AI, and it's almost impossible to have a discussion in today's world without mentioning AI. But from your perspective, what are these kinds of trends or opportunities that you see in this space that you're particularly either excited about or really kind of looking for?
Yeah, so I think I think in Silicon Valley there have been and will always, I think, be these waves of interest. So we had a non-generative AI wave, followed by crypto Web3 wave, and now we're in the generative AI wave. So in the generative AI wave that we see, and many people feel like this is a really fundamentally different and more powerful wave than any that have come before us. The areas that we are I guess in a general level, the two things we're looking for are, number one, do companies have access to proprietary data on which you can use these models to produce better results? So in our company, Open-Evidence, for instance, the reason that AI doctor can pass the U.S. medical licensing exam at a score of over 90% is because Daniel went off and struck proprietary deals to ingest a lot of data from the Mayo Clinic, from the New England Journal of Medicine that are not publicly available and have not been crawled by OpenAI, Google, and the rest of them. So he's able to take the underlying models provided by Google, OpenAI, with proprietary data and generate a better result. So we're interested in companies that have that type of proprietary, that either produce it or have access to proprietary data. The second category we look for are companies that somehow are able to tweak the models such that with the same data, you can produce superior results. While that's theoretically possible, in a lot of the companies we've seen, we just run a very simple experiment, which is you ask ChatGPT this question, and you ask the optimized model this question, and you compare the answers. And so far, we have seen that the underlying models are really quite good. They're very competent. For the most part, they outperform the optimized models because the underlying models seem to have been optimized for all kinds of use cases from the start. So those are the two broad areas of AI as it's going that we look for. One third area that is very interesting to us is AI containment. So AI is a lot of the kind of skeptics of AI will say that there are lots of inherent dangers here, and I happen to agree with that. There are lots of inherent dangers. And unlike, nuclear weapons, this is not able to be regulated by governments. In a nuclear weapons, you have all kinds of intelligence. You can use a Geiger meter and find out where there's uranium being produced, and you can if you find something you don't like you could send an army in there and destroy it and it'd be gone. But this is the internet, and so there is no way that even if all governments were to agree, okay, we need to stamp this out, you can't do that because it just exists everywhere. And so I believe that the way that a lot of these dangers will be ultimately prevented is by kind of AI containment. Good AI is doing battle with bad AIs. It'll be kind of very analogous to the way trading on Wall Street used to be done. It used to be humans trading against each other, and now it's really algorithms trading against each other. And there's going to be a cat and mouse game, but it's not going to be a human game. And so the companies that are producing AI containment products to help figure out, for instance, is that photo fake or real? Is that voice that sounds like Manny really Manny or not? And we don't have a lot of those technologies now. And those will become ever more important for us humans to discern what is true and what is not true.
It reminds me a little bit of the whole computer security world, right?
Yeah, very good metaphor.
It's a kind of an iterative process. There's new techniques that are developed to, take advantage of loopholes in systems. Then the defenses get stronger, and then the attacks get stronger, and it's this kind of back and forth effort. What really fascinated me, Patrick, about what you said is, I think that the fact that Gen AI is essentially unleashed, right? It's out there. You can't corral it. You can't hurt it. It's near impossible to control. And as you said, I think that has the potential for some amazing things to happen and also some incredibly frightening things to happen. But one of the things a lot of people ask about is when we talk about Gen AI is, what does it mean for the human, right? You've said earlier, this vision of an entrepreneur with an employee of one, right? One human, but utilizing all these tools to create a service, to build a business. And there was an article this past week in The Atlantic about what really is explaining the entry-level labor force declines, right? And attributed in part to the fact that AI and Gen AI are doing so many types of things, right? That you don't need 5 aspiring consultants, right, to do the analytic work that now Gen AI tools can do, right? So I'm wondering from your perspective, in this kind of environment with the rapid technological change, what does a bright person do? How do they position themselves, not just in the near term, but longer term to really be successful and to be adaptable to these circumstances?
Yeah, such a great question. We had, as you might know, Sam Altman. We brought Sam Altman to campus in May. And a student in our giant session, which had 1,000 people in Memorial Church, asked him this exact question. I thought, I don't think I can do better than his answer, which is that he thinks about the world in two camps. In one camp, whatever you are doing, the company you're starting, the job that you have, you are fearing the next release of GPT. And in another camp, another group of people with a different type of job, a different type of company, they can't wait for the next release because the next release will make them better. And he would have thought, he said, that 80% of people would have pursued stuff in category 2, but he observes that 80% of people are still choosing things that are in category 1. And so that is a very generalistic answer, but I think we're so early on that you really want to think, what is the thing that I'm doing? Is it going to be buoyed by the future models, or is it going to be crushed by them? And I think that's really kind of a good framework to think about. Just to go back to something like open evidence, he is very enthusiastic about the next release of the models. Why? Because with the proprietary data, it'll just be a better and better doctor. It passed the U.S. medical license exam at 90%, and next time it'll be 95%, and 96%, and it'll asymptotically approach 100. Whereas something like radiologists, today a lot of machines can actually read scans, CAT scans, CT scans, X-rays better than humans can. And so that is a field, again, writ large, where I think people are fearful of the next models because they will get better and better.
Yeah, and I think time will really tell how that shakes itself out. And it seems that in today's world, you need to accept that Gen AI is part of our world.
Yeah,
and I think it sounds kind of silly, right? But it is true. You have to accept it. You have to embrace it. You have to look for ways to leverage its use, particularly to your needs and to your circumstances. And then I think, just like with every technology innovation that we ever had, from the time of the Luddite movement, right? That we just adapt. And some of those circumstances are daunting because we don't know exactly what they'll be.
That's right.
But I prefer to think about this as a game changer in a positive way. And I think at the end of the day, if we can solve, especially in the field of medicine and health, if we can solve that, wow, there's obviously a cost to this. But at the end of the day, if you look at that trade-off and you look at what that impact can be, it really has the potential to be amazing. So let me ask you one final question, and this is back to you as Patrick Chung.
Okay.
So in your own journey, what was that seminal moment, or maybe seminal moments, where all of a sudden it clicked for you? Like that was that moment. Maybe it was someone who helped you. Maybe it was a particular experience that clicked for you that said, this is what I really see myself doing.
Oh, okay. I don't think I actually don't think there has been that moment yet, Manny. I think life is this, very journey. But the moment that actually set me on the current path was that I had, I'd been a good student in high school. I got into Harvard College. I did well here. I won a scholarship to go to Oxford. I recruited to go to McKinsey. I got, all of this stuff. And I was on this very, very well-trod path. It seemed, I don't know, predestined, but it was certainly the path that kind of everyone thought would be best. And then I literally bumped into a high school friend of mine in the parking lot outside the Mac. And he had gone to he was 2 years older than me. He'd gone to high school with me. He was here at Harvard College with me. He was in Winthrop House. He graduated early. And he said, "What are you doing next year?" And I said, "Oh, I'm so excited. I got into this Harvard JD MBA. I'm going to enroll in that." He said, "Why don't you come join my startup?" And I thought, what? What? You know how hard I've worked on this path? This train is not getting derailed. Thank you very much. And he said, just it's the beginning of summer. Why don't you just come join us for the summer? And I thought, well, that might be interesting. And this is a good friend of mine. Why not? And so I joined him for the summer. And at the end of the summer, I had this real decision to make, which was enroll as planned in the JD MBA or put that on pause and join him full-time in this startup that we were starting. And it was the first time that all of my hard work and training and background and like the voice of my parents in my head were all screaming, "Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Are you crazy? You can't do that. Don't do that. That's very dangerous." And I just thought, you know what? I'm going to do that. And it was the best experience ever. I mean, we started this company which won the Harvard Business School New Ventures competition. We raised about $100 million in venture financing. We grew this company to over $100 million in revenues. And it was just such a magical time because you were working with people you really, really, really loved on projects that were so exciting to you. You had such degrees of autonomy. You felt like you were changing the world. And I just thought, wow, this was totally the right decision. And I mean, what if I had never bumped into you in the parking lot?
Yeah.
And so I think the lesson that I took from that was sometimes, you have to be open-minded enough to really evaluate something that wasn't on your expected path, and to really be introspective enough to say, is this a good fit for me? Would I love this? And if so, what's the well-trod path will always be there. But this other thing is, I think, more special. And so I'm glad I did it.
Clearly, it was the right decision for you, and it was the right decision for a number of people that have benefited by you making that decision. But there was also another element of it I want to call out, and that is it's courage. Yeah. You do have to have courage to push back against the expectations your family has of you, your friends have of you. There is the simple path forward, right? You're doing all the steps in the prescribed order.
Right.
And everything is falling together to say, wait a minute, maybe, just maybe. And that's something that I would like to see, especially more young people, accept in themselves and encourage that sense of, you know what? I'm going to try this. I don't know what might happen. You didn't know, right?
No,
you might love
not.
it. You might hate it. You might go back to that path. But you decided to take the risk, take the shot. And I think that's something that sometimes from generation to generation, that interest, that capability isn't always there to the same degree. Yeah. But I think the messages today for our listeners are so impactful, right? And among them is to understand, to be in touch with themselves, what's important to them, right? To be open to different ways of thinking, of different ideas, to realize that even the simplest of ideas could be incredibly successful. Whether you start that company or whether you're part of a company that's, that is pushing those boundaries. And I just love what you said about even when you don't think you're the right kind of person to do this, you might very well be.
Yeah.
It looks like you discovered in yourself, at that time that, you know what, I'm more of an entrepreneur than I ever thought I would be. Patrick, I can't thank you enough. And I know our listeners are gonna so enjoy this segment. So I want to thank you. And I also want to make sure that anytime you're back in town, to get you back on the show and look at some other kinds of questions that we could talk about.
Thank you. I would really love that.
Thank you, Patrick. All the best to you and to XFund.
Thank you, Manny.
From the Mignoni Center for Career Success at Harvard University, this has been the Career 411 podcast. My name is Manny Contaminolis, your host. You can find the show transcript and other episodes on the Mignoni Center for Career Success website. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate the show on Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcast. You can also connect with us on Instagram @HarvardMCS. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you on the next episode.